Hi guys, Josh Lloyd back again, and today in these tutorial videos we're going to be looking at the difference between projections and player rankings, which many new members to the site often get confused about, and often get the questions posed to me on Twitter or in the message forums, or why have you got this guy ranked so high? And it is really important to understand the difference. Now, at the top of the screen you can see the menus. We go under rankings, and there's two options here. These are the two that people get confused the most: player rankings and projections. And it's a really simple thing. Projections, as we know what projections mean, is looking forward. So that's us looking at what we think is going to happen moving forward. Player rankings is how the players have performed in the past. So if we go to player rankings here, and this is how the screen comes up, this is all the numbers from last season. So it tells us how everyone performed. You've got Russell Westbrook averaging his triple-double, 31.6 points, 10.7 boards, 10.4 assists, and he ranked as the second overall player in fantasy over the course of the season, with James Harden there at number one. This tells you how these players performed. You can go at the top here through individual teams. You can choose Houston. You can see how everyone ended up ranking there. You know, Trevor Ariza at 54, Patrick Beverley at 64. With all their numbers from last season. There are many other things you can do. Obviously over here we've got this drop-down menu. It says NBA 16-17, which is last season. Once this season kicks off, the 17-18 season will be the default, and you can see how players have done this season. But you can go down and look at all past seasons. You can look at a combination of the past 2-3 years, past 2 years, past 3 years, playoff performances, preseason performances, college numbers, Olympic numbers, summer league numbers. So you can set whatever time frame you want. And then you've got all this area here. So we can look at the full season numbers. You can look at what happened in the last 1 month of action. So if I click that, you'll see the rankings change. In the last 3 months, the past 1 day, and you can change that. You can make it the last 10 days. Click on refresh, and you'll see how did the last 10 days of the season, how did these guys rank? The last 10 games. You can check that out. How did these guys go in the last 10 games? See all these guys played all 10 of those games. You can choose whatever date range you want. Post All-Star break, which would have been last season, the 19th of February. So you can have a look. That's pre-All-Star break. You can push refresh. These are how these guys performed pre-All-Star. Then you can flip it the other way and do post-All-Star, or whatever time frame you want to do. It's all customizable. The next thing under rankings, we've got this section here. Top players means that if your league is a 12-team league with 13-man rosters, 156 players will be rostered by teams at all times. So this is giving you the top, or we'll show you exactly once we go back to full season. Top players in this sort of a league, it goes through and gives you the top 188. So the top 156 guys that are on rosters, and then like an additional 36 guys which are in consideration for waiver wire. So giving you that, who's available that it might be good. You can click it to all players, and that will put up all players in the NBA, so you can see all of those guys. So it's still, when it's looking at using the Z scores, it's still using the population sample of your league size, but you can go down and start looking at how everyone performed by clicking that all players option. You can do my players, so when you import your teams, it'll only show the players that you own. Available means players available on the waiver wire who aren't owned by a team. The combination of available and my players, and the ones that are available, so we're just getting rid of the other players who are on other teams. You can choose it by rookies, and when you click rookies, what year rookies? The 2016 rookies from last season. Let's see how they look. What about rookies? What about players who were rookies in 2015? How did they do in their second year last year? So that's another option you can do. The value type, per 36 total, per game, that's all pretty straightforward. And then you've got your punt categories section here. So this is using 8 categories here. The ones in green have been punted. I have on this in this league, this is my league that I do a lot of research with. I have all these categories in, so I can just see how players do in those categories, but I don't use it to calculate their value because they're not standard fantasy categories. So if you want to look, how do the players look in a punt free throw situation? You turn off free throws and you'll see it adjusts things significantly. LeBron moves up to number 2. You've got Rudy Gobert at 11 there. You've got a bunch of different guys who do change. Andre Drummond moves into the top 20 here. Dwight Howard, is 21st. Dwight Howard's there. So these are the different things that you can do with the rankings. The other option you've got, you can export to Excel clearly and play around with the data yourself. And then edit display columns, where you can choose what actually shows up on the screen. You don't want that Yahoo ADP that I've got there, get rid of it. You can put the ownership percentage, the O rank, the dollars if you're in an auction league. This is important to put up. But that's more for projections. ESPN data, all this different stuff. NBA salary, if a guy's injured, their age, all these things, and that will display on the screen. So if we go in here and push age, and go okay, you'll see a column appear here. Here it is. age, it tells you the age of the player, which can be really important for Dynasty or even when you're looking at redraft leagues, hey, who's a potential to drop off. So that's rankings. We're looking back, we're looking at past things. Rankings, and this is, I'm really, really strong on this, rankings for drafting in fantasy basketball, they're not, it's not fantasy football. This is not how it works. You're never going off a list and going, I'm picking, well, my rankings say this guy should be number 15. I've got this pick and he's the highest guy that I take him. There's a lot more nuance to it. So that's why when we're looking forward, it's called projections. And we're projecting these guys' stats. And yes, they do have a rank that comes up that puts them in an order based on their overall standard score value. But it's not an order in which to draft players. There's so much more that goes into it, as we discussed in the draft tracker: position eligibility, position scarcity, statistical scarcity, how quick those things are going off the board, how it fits your team, all those sort of things. Like I talked about the punt free throw, like you can have a look at, Andre Drummond and DeAndre Jordan move far down this list. Jordan's here at 62, but you punt free throws, you're talking about a top 20, top 25 sort of a guy in that situation. So it's never just a straight list of rankings. So that's why we're not calling this rankings, and it's projections, and we're looking at everyone's individual stats. The rank is determined by the value, which in this case, because I've punted all these categories, we're looking at the punt value column, and you can see that order there is the order of the ranks here, and it's determined by the value. So these are the stats. So we're projecting James Harden at 27.9 points, all these numbers, and then the value, the punt V, which is punt value, is determined by the value in these categories. And how that is determined is, it's called a standard score. So we get the population sample of a league, and that's why it's important you get your league settings right. If it's a 20-team league, a 15-team league, whatever, it changes the standard score calculation. So when you look at this, a standard score basically tells you how many standard deviations away from the mean that player is. So you calculate the standard deviation across the sample, you calculate the mean, and a guy like Harden here has a standard score of 2.36, meaning that his 27.9 points projected that we have him for this season puts him 2.36 standard deviations above the mean in a league that is a 12-team league. You change that league to a 20-team league, and that number will jump up, because the average of points in a league where instead of having 156 players rostered, you've got 260 players, the average of points will drop. So his number there will increase in that situation. And that's how all of those are categorized. The field goal percentage and free throw percentage is a little bit more complicated because volume increases it too. So we're not just looking, it's not just purely looking at the percentages, it's to do with the volume that these players shoot as well. And that's an important thing to pay attention to. That's why when you're looking at the value, it's a really important area to look at, the field goal and free throw percentage value column, and that adds into it because it does take into account volume. And then all those numbers that you've got as active categories, like here, they're calculated, they're averaged, and that's your value here. And that puts them in that order. But as I said, it's never about just taking guys in a straight order. Maybe in the first round you can make that argument, but again, position and statistical scarcity does come into play there. So it's never a straight ranking. So don't get out of your head rankings. Like, get rankings out of your head. Rankings is the past, projections is the future. So we're projecting what these guys are going to do. And often people will say, oh, I think you've got this guy ranked too low. He's ranked 80th. And my pretty much standard response is, what about the projection don't you agree with? Because it is all based on how these stats project. And if you go, I think his field goal percentage is too low, I think he'll average more of this, then that's fine. But we don't go in and just rank these players and go, okay, well, I'm going to put Harden at 1, I'm going to put Westbrook at 2. I'm not going to go in and do that. It's all based on the statistical projections, and I don't go in and go, well, I need this guy to be at this spot, so I need to adjust that. And as you can see, as we get down towards this area in projections, these guys are all so close. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 players here all on the same value, and then another guy 0.02 away, another guy 0.02, and the further down we get in the draft and in the projections, you'll see how close everything is. So small changes in players, they shoot 4% better from the field, they can jump 30 spots. And that's just the nature of how all these values are calculated. So just remember, projections are moving forward, rankings are what's happened in the past. And if you've got everything set up with your draft tracker and your league settings, this will be really valuable. This, it obviously feeds all into everything that runs through the site, all the projections, but just make sure you're understanding the difference between the two. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.